Hello my friends, family, esteemed colleagues. Question came about to explain or talk about meningitis in American English. Well, itis, it is inflammation of menings. And menings are something similar to what we have protecting a baby in the womb, placenta. We have something similar protecting brain. It's a membrane which is designed basically to not allow bigger particles to go into the brain. It is like a filtering device, so the brain is being kept safe. So all the nutrients, well, you see, the brain requires a huge amount of energy. It uses the most energy of our body, almost twice as much as muscles. And for this, it needs a good supply of blood. But when whoever saw brain, you know it's white. So it gets a huge amount of blood, but where is that blood? Well, it's being filtered through menings. And this filter does not allow the bigger particles to go through. So basically brain is being supplied through lymphatic system. And this is why I do not even like to separate lymphatic system from a circulatory system, because it is tightly connected. It all depends on the blood. So when blood goes to brain, it actually goes to mening. And in meninges, it is being filtered. And smaller particles, which eliminates right away red blood cells, can penetrate and continue as a lymph and flood the brain, bring the nutrients, and also oxygenating. Now, why does mening become inflamed? Same as I have explained when I was talking about inflammation. Inflammation is not what we are being told in medical school. Okay, it is actually simple forced hydration. Why forced? Because normal hydration goes through osmotic pump. And for this, the cell has to be willing to hydrate. Again, we are talking about a robot. So there is no free will of a cell. Cell cannot decide, oh, I'm not going to hydrate. I feel bad today and I just don't want to do it. It's a programmed robot. It has a sensor, and according to what it senses, it has respond according to the program it is being programmed with. So if there is something in the blood that is harmful to the cell is going to cringe. It will make the orifice of a membrane tighter so the stuff doesn't penetrate. And for sure, it is not going to engage osmotic pump to grab as much of the stuff and push it in. So if we maintain our blood toxic, then there is not going to be cellular hydration. And we know older we get, because toxicity is a cumulative process, especially when you do not support your body to cleanse. And not only that we are not supporting the blood to cleanse, we are working against it by depriving ourselves of salt. There is no cleansing of a blood possible without salt. Why? Because salts are minerals and they are ions. They are contributing to electroconductivity of the blood. So lower level of ions you have, the body, to be able to maintain the electroconductivity, has to reduce amount of water. And by doing so, there is no water available for cleansing. So more dehydrated you are on the level of blood, the less you are going to cleanse. And when we start feeling the first symptoms of dehydration, well, it's not thirst. It is actually dark urine. But I've talked about this in many other videos, so you just can go there or go to my blog and just read about it. So if we maintain toxic blood, we are going to have a problem in a variety of our systems on a cellular level, because we will become dehydrated on cellular level. If you suffer from frequent headaches, well, this is already a problem with meningitis, because brain itself does not have sensory nerves. So you don't have a headache because something is wrong with your brain, although it may be pressure that then goes out and expands, touching the meninges, which has sensory nerves. But we're not talking about tumors right now, we are talking about meningitis. So if you suffer from headaches, you already have certain level of meningitis, if those headaches are frequent. And it's becoming a chronic problem. Now, we are being told that meningitis can be caused by bacteria or by fungus. Actually, we are being told that risk of contracting meningitis increases if you are not vaccinated. Okay? Because they have the concoction vaccine that they already shoot 2-year-olds with. It's a blood influenza type of a vaccine. Influenza already tells you. Well, what the tricky thing is, again, we just have to observe, and when you have already this better understanding of the body, and then you read through the articles and you revisit the scientific medical literature, it becomes clownish It becomes so freaking funny looking at these things, because what is the most common cause of meningitis? A viral meningitis. So what does this imply? It means that you have meningitis, right away blood work. If they find bacteria, bingo, boom, that's it. If they find parasite, that's it. If they find fungus, okay, that's black and blue, you can prove it, you can see it. If they don't find nothing, virus. Nobody can disprove. If you accept that this elusive beast exists, that no one has ever seen or proven. So it's a mostly viral problem, which in our type of a language means bullshit problem. It's not what we are being told. We are talking about toxicity. We are talking on blood toxicity, which will dehydrate cells. And, you know, if we are using brain more, if brain you can use if you are doing a lot of thinking, if you are playing chess, if you are learning languages, if you are driving fast, so you have to zero and think. But also if you are in fear, your brain works overtime. And if your blood is toxic, the filtration, toxic stuff comes, meaning the tissue has to perform, becomes a higher dehydrated, and it starts going into inflammation because, again, remember, it's a robot. So cells do not want to hydrate because, not that they don't want to, but simply the sensor of the cell says toxicity and does whatever cell is programmed to do in a toxic environment. It shuts it down. But at the same time, the cell has to perform. And doing so, it is becoming acidic. So it has to get out the acids. For this, it needs water. So finally comes to the point where it cannot perform its duties. And this is where, again, sensor kicks in, says, wow, meningitis is overly acidic, it's dropping the voltage, and it cannot function. So override sets in into forced hydration. Again, it's a robot. Nothing is done with decision of our consciousness, of our ego. It's robotic mechanism. So the forced hydration sets in, not in the whole body, just where it is needed. So your blood vessel become constricted, which then increases the blood pressure, because constriction of artery is going to increase the back pressure in artery and then squirt the liquid, the blood, into the tissue, but it cannot come out until tissue pressure increases enough so with the same rate blood can come out of the tissue. And this is your inflammation. which, depending on strength of the inflammation, how much pressure it is going to create, it will affect the sensory nerve and create pain. And I have explained, very often it happens that you have a mildly inflamed meninges, so you may just feel a little heavy head, you know, fogginess, not being able to think clearly. And then you get a little excited, which means you speed up your heart rate, which increases slightly the blood pressure, but enough that will create the extra pressure in already mildly inflamed meninges and give you headache. So people who suffer from chronic headaches, they have low-grade meningitis present almost constantly. And every time they get excited, or they drink coffee, stimulants, heart stimulants, pop, 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 increases the blood pressure and headache. Sugar does the same thing. They have sugar drink, pow, headache. So meningitis is not only what we are being told. Oh, you get fever. Well, when do you have fever? When the blood is extremely toxic. We call it sepsis. And now there is no bacteria, so you cannot pin it on bacteria. You cannot pin it on viral. In fact, it's just pure toxicity. Toxicity could be from various sources. We are deliberately being poisoned through food. A funny saying, I was reading Mayo Clinic. I like to go through their articles because they give you the points very clearly. So they tell you a prevention, how you prophylaxis, how you can prevent yourself, be healthy. This is a very good suggestion. But then to be healthy, they say, eat correctly, eat plenty of fruits, vegetables, and whole grain. They tell you to be healthy, and at the same time they tell you how to poison yourself with the food. So, to me, it's very laughable. The recommendation is great. Be healthy, do some exercising. Animals need to move. They are created to move. And then everything works better because heart rate is better, the blood circulation is faster, higher blood pressure. There's nothing wrong with high blood pressure, as long as it is not caused because of deterioration of our blood vessels. So, there are many so-called diseases which are not diseases at all. Well, I say disease doesn't exist. It's just phases of toxicity and symptoms that the body shows during this toxicity. So, you know, when we have meningitis, they say, okay, how do you know you have meningitis? Headaches. Headaches with nausea and vomiting. Well, when do you have fever, nausea, and vomiting? Highly toxic blood. Why would headache cause vomiting? Well, toxicity and the sensors of the body. Since pain is a sign of high toxicity, sometimes when pain comes, severe pain from injury, you get nausea. Again, body sensor. It was just wrong message. I remember once when I was making a sailing trip from Aruba to St. Martin, and this is, any sailor knows, it's a very bad trip because it's basically against the wind, against the current. And I had storm the whole way through. And I was so tired because even autopilot cannot control it, because storms in the Caribbean are usually created around the clouds. So you have a cloud formation on this side, and on this side each one has its own storm, and then you have a very confusing seas, and then when you hit the storm you have a very rapidly changing winds. So you have a steady wind, let's say 30 knots, and you're plowing into this, and all of a sudden you're coming to the store, so wind starts increasing and it goes to 40, 50 knots. But you know that right after it's going to drop down. So you don't even have time to go and reef the sails. So you just put them tight, and then you have to be behind the steering, and you drive the boat on the edge. So you accelerate and keep it in the speed, and when the wind hits the sail, the boat heels, then you go into the wind and just wedge it, and so you have to drive it there. So I was several days, I did not have proper sleep. I had a friend with me, but he did not feel up to the task, so whenever storm hit, which was every hour almost, I had to go disengage the pilot, and I had to hand steer it through that. And after a few days it got to me, and I was very tired, and just go in a cockpit and wanted to sit down and put knee, and I full force I banged the knee on the edge of aluminum boat. The pain was so severe that I was nauseous. I almost threw up. Didn't, but almost. Wow. So, and it's not because of my toxicity, it was because of the pain. So we have to understand our robot. And this is what we call a reflex action. It's just programming. We are being programmed. High toxicity involves always inflammation. And then inflammation causes pain. So sometimes strong pain hits and body goes up, toxicity, or vomit, get stuff out. Well, it's not always like this. So glitches of programming. Anyway, so we have to start understanding our body. When we talk about meningitis, it's a chronic stuff. Because meningitis doesn't come, oh, you got bacteria, your body is clean, you got bacteria, you got meningitis. It doesn't happen this way. You got bacteria because you are toxic. And you got meningitis because toxicity is chronic. Can it be acute? Well, when meningitis is in question, I doubt. Well, again, some strong poison can inflame the brain, can inflame the meninges as well. But we are almost always talking here about chronic problem, chronic issue. And Don't wait until you get fever. You are suffering from headaches. It is meningitis. And start hydrating. Start cleansing your blood. What is another symptom of meningitis? Skin rash. When does a skin rash occur? When there is highly toxic blood. And usually because it's very dehydrated, so cleansing doesn't go through kidneys, doesn't go through mucosal tissue, it has to go through skin because it loses least amount of water doing that. Which means that you are highly dehydrated on the blood level. Your blood level is very low because you don't have plasma. Your blood becomes dense and toxic, creating skin rash where it pushes the toxins out. And of course you're going to have a meningitis. I had a case of a gentleman that suffered from headaches and could not shake them off. Tried anything. Every specialist could not get rid of headache. And then he started doing the self-healers protocol, and everything else was improving with the exception of headache. So I asked him to give me daily report exactly of what he's drinking and eating. And I noticed every day he drinks the small can of condensed milk, which is very sweet. Sugar. As soon as he stopped this, bingo, headache is gone. Again, it was not just the milk, it was the blood. He was already cleansing, and the only tipping point was this one mistake. There's almost always variety of things happening in a body, but that can influence the same symptoms, because symptoms basically are very few. It's itchiness, it's pain, it's nausea, diarrhea, fever. Symptoms. And always keep in mind, when doctor tells you it's a virus, it means they didn't find diddly squat. So that's escape. And most of doctors do believe that it's actual virus. So, again, if you are suffering from meningitis, go and cleanse. Correct your diet. By correcting diet, do exactly opposite of what your doctor told you, or nutritionist, or vegan or vegetarian. Go pure carnivore. This is your best way and fastest cleansing you are going to achieve with a recalibration of your genes. Very important. Because you have to get into keto stage. Every animal has ketogenic state, except of human and domestic animals that we feed. And we take the parameters of how high cholesterol should be, how high triglyceride should be. We take this as a norm using defective body, because we are all glucoholics. Since Adam and Eve, we started poisoning ourselves with glucose. and readjusted the genome to it. And the body does not work the same. This is why the age dropped from 600 and plus years to less than 200 years, and now less than 100. Because of the wrong food and consequent toxicity and inability of the body to detoxify. Keep in mind, body is self-maintaining, self-healing, perfect robot. And through the science, we are being told exactly how to prevent this robot to function correctly. First, don't give it salt, so it cannot maintain hydration. No hydration, lack of water, no detox. And then give it the wrong fuel that it cannot store. So now it's obliged constantly munching and polluting the body. So everything we are being told is upside down. Basically, try not to take medication. Keep away from jabs. Hydrate yourself correctly with plasma, diluted seawater, water with not refined sea salt, and eat correctly. Eat raw as much as possible, and the only food that you can actually process in raw state is animal-based products, from milk, eggs, to anything that moves, from worm to elephant, anything that moves. And your body will work like a Swiss clock. Nothing else I can add to this. Thank you for being here. Love you all.